It was a late afternoon in early October when Miriam Hayes took the trail that wasn't on the map. The kind of day when the light turns amber, and the forest breathes like it's alive. Her hiking boots crunched over fallen leaves as the sun dipped behind the hills, dragging shadows like ink across the dirt path. She hadn't planned to hike this far. Just a weekend getaway in northern Vermont. No cell service. No emails. No sound but birds and wind and the occasional squirrel skittering through the brush. It was supposed to be peaceful. But the deeper she walked, the quieter it got. It started with the wind falling still. Then the birdsong stopped. Even the insects hushed, like the whole forest was listening. She noticed the path had narrowed, barely more than a trail of dark soil winding between thick pine roots. The trees began to lean, slightly at first, then more obviously, their trunks curving inward like a tunnel made of bark and moss. That's when she realized she wasn't entirely sure how long she'd been walking. Pulling her phone from her jacket, she frowned. Still no signal. The screen showed 6:02 p.m., but the sky was already sinking into twilight. The sun, it seemed, had slipped away early. Okay, she muttered to herself. Turn around. Don't make this a story they tell on the news. But when she turned back, the path was gone. Behind her, there was only thick underbrush and crooked trees. The trail had dissolved. Or moved. Or, somehow, vanished. She froze. Then, ahead through the mist, she saw it, a soft, golden glow, flickering through the trees like candlelight. Warm. Inviting. A house. The closer Miriam stepped toward the glow, the more the forest seemed to pull back, not opening exactly but clearing just enough for her to pass. Branches arched away with brittle groans. Leaves whispered as they fell, though there was no wind. The house came into view slowly, like it had been waiting for her eyes to adjust. It was tall, 2.5 stories, with a steep roof and warped shingles that shimmered wet in the fading light. The windows were long and narrow, their glass fogged from the inside. A sagging porch wrapped around the front, half-eaten by ivy and moss. One shutter hung loose, creaking softly. And above the front door, just under the peaked gable, hung an old wooden sign. Graft & Co., Clockmasters. EST 1889. Miriam stepped onto the porch. The boards didn't creak under her weight. They moaned. She reached for the doorknob, heart pounding, not in fear, not yet, but in the way your body responds when it knows something your brain hasn't caught up to. The knob was brass, cold despite the house's glow. It turned easily. Click. The door swung open with a slow exhale, like something had been holding its breath on the other side. Inside, the air was dense with the scent of oil, varnish, and something sweet but decayed, like flowers left too long in a vase. Shadows crowded the corners of the front room, but every clock she could see was covered in dust. Dozens of them. Floor clocks. Mantel clocks. Ornate wooden casings. Gilded hands frozen in different times. None ticking. Yet the light inside was strangely warm. A fire glowed in the hearth, though no smoke rose from the chimney. Miriam hesitated in the doorway. "Hello?" she called out. Silence. Then, faintly, behind her. Tick. She turned. The door had closed on its own. The tick had been real. Miriam stepped away from the door, her breath visible now, curling in the air like fog. The warmth she thought she'd seen from outside felt distant, like the glow of a fireplace in an old painting. Something beautiful, but unreachable. The interior of the house was both grand and suffocating. High ceilings loomed above her, their plaster cracked like dried skin. Dust lay thick on everything, but no cobwebs swayed from the rafters. No mice. No insects. No movement. Except for the tick. She spun, scanning the room. A large grandfather clock stood near the fireplace, its hands frozen at 3:33, pendulum unmoving. Nothing else stirred. Still, the sound had come from somewhere. Her eyes drifted upward to the staircase. The second floor was shrouded in darkness. "Anyone here?" she called again, louder this time. No response. She stepped forward. The floorboards flexed slightly, but didn't groan. She passed between the clocks, each more ornate than the last. Walnut cases with inlaid silver. Glass faces so clean she could see her reflection, blurred slightly, warped. One clock, small and brass, sat on a table by itself. It was newer. Or better cared for. And its second hand twitched. Then moved. Tick. She took a step back. Her heel struck something solid, another clock. She turned, and saw a tall, skeletal one with iron ribs. Its face was blank. Behind her, the ticking picked up. The brass clock now ticked steadily. 1, 2, 3. Tick. 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 Each beat was louder than the last. Dozens of clocks now whispered. Just beneath the surface of their silence, something began to stir. Then, from the staircase, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, one at a time, descending from the darkness above. Miriam froze. She wasn't alone. The footsteps echoed like soft hammer blows against the wood, measured, almost ceremonial. Miriam backed against the wall, her breath shallow. The fireplace flickered once, and the shadows shifted. A tall silhouette emerged at the top of the stairs, long coat, thin frame, head tilted slightly to one side. "Hello?" she tried, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure stopped. From that distance, she could see little more than outline, but something about his stillness unsettled her. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Then, suddenly, he descended the last few steps. What struck Miriam first wasn't his face, though it was pale and gaunt, but his eyes. They were pale, washed-out gray, like smoke had leaked into the whites. His hair was long, combed straight back, as if from another era. He wore a waistcoat, dusty but once fine. In his left hand, he carried a silver pocket watch. It ticked faintly. Tick. 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 He stopped 3 steps from the floor. Close enough now that she could see the thin lines etched around his mouth. Not from age. From frowning. "Are you lost?" he asked. His voice was quiet and dry, like paper dragged across stone. I think so," she managed. "I was hiking. I must have wandered off the trail. People don't find this place by accident." His eyes narrowed slightly. She took an unconscious step back, but stopped when her heel brushed another ticking clock. He tilted his head. "Do the clocks speak to you yet?" "What?" "No, what are you talking about?" He smiled, just barely. "Then you're early." She felt a cold bloom in her stomach. "Is this your home?" It was, he said, and stepped down to the main floor. The watch in his hand ticked louder now. But now, it's hers. Who's her? He leaned close, and whispered. "The one in the walls." Miriam blinked. "The one in the walls." The phrase landed heavy in her ears, as if it had weight. "What do you mean, the one in the walls?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked past her, slow and careful, his boots barely making a sound on the dusty floorboards. He moved like someone walking in a dream, fluid, deliberate, always listening. She noticed he never let go of the watch. He stopped in front of the fireplace and looked up at the grand clock hanging over the mantel. "She sleeps now," he said softly, eyes fixed on the frozen hands pointing to 3:33. "But she doesn't like being disturbed." Miriam felt a chill crawl up her spine. She glanced around. The clocks were still ticking, every one of them now. Not loud, but inescapable. A rhythmic whisper echoing through the house. "Who are you?" she asked. "I was Eli Graft," he said, still facing the fire. "I built this house. I shaped every gear and tooth in these walls. I gave them voices." He turned back to her. But she gave them life. The floor beneath her feet seemed to hum faintly. Miriam felt it, vibration. Deep. Subtle. As if the house itself had a heartbeat. "You're dead," she said, not really a question. Eli's lips twitched into a half-smile. "I was. But time does strange things here. She doesn't let go easily." Miriam took a step back, heart hammering. "Who is she?" Eli walked toward the wall nearest her and placed his hand gently on the faded wallpaper. His fingertips lingered, caressing the surface like one might touch a lover's skin. "She watches through the gears," he whispered. "She hears everything the clocks hear. And when they whisper, it's her voice you're hearing." Miriam turned slowly in place. All around her, the clocks ticked in harmony, forming one great rhythm. The tick had turned into a breath. Then she heard it. A faint, scratching noise behind the walls. Like something moving. Slowly. Patiently. And it was coming closer. The scratching behind the walls was soft at first, almost indistinct, like a mouse burrowing. But then it came again, long, slow, deliberate. Like fingernails dragging across old wood. Miriam backed away from the wall, her breath catching. The wallpaper there was peeling in long, curling strips, revealing dark wood beneath, mottled and warped. "Is there an animal in there?" she asked, but her voice cracked, uncertain even to her own ears. Eli turned to her, calmly tucking the silver watch into his coat pocket. "She's not an animal. She's a presence. An echo. I built the clocks, but she made them listen." "You're not making any sense," Miriam said, voice rising with panic. "I need to get out of here. Now." She spun on her heel and hurried toward the door. Her hand grasped the knob. Cold. She twisted. It didn't move. She pulled harder. The knob turned, but the door would not open. Behind her, Eli's voice was solemn. "You stepped onto her time. Now she's measuring yours. Let me out," she shouted. Then, from the walls, came a sound so strange and intimate it froze her blood. A voice, her own voice, whispering. "Let me out." She staggered back from the door, colliding with a small cabinet. Clocks spilled off the shelves and hit the floor, but they didn't stop ticking. Not one. Eli stood silently in the center of the room. "You need to listen, Miriam," he said softly. "How do you know my name?" He only pointed upward. Miriam followed his gesture to the grand staircase, which now looked impossibly tall. At the very top, the hallway yawned open into darkness, and a shadow moved, fast, too fast, across the landing. Then she heard something that didn't belong to her voice. A whisper, distant but sharp. "Myra." Eli's voice broke her trance. "The walls have heard you. Now she wants to see you." The whisper echoed like breath through a hollow flute, "Myra." It wasn't possible. She hadn't told him her name. Had she? Miriam stood frozen at the foot of the stairs. They stretched upward, impossibly steep, each step swathed in shadows. The banister was carved from dark oak, worn smooth by time or touch, or both. She took a step back. "I'm not going up there," she said. "Whatever this is, this weird, haunted clock thing, it's not my problem. Just let me out, okay? Please." Eli didn't move. "There is no out. Not while the clocks are ticking. Then I'll smash them." He shook his head with such sadness it chilled her more than any threat. That's not how time works here. Suddenly, the ticking stopped. Every single clock in the house fell silent, as if some unseen conductor had waved his hand and silenced the orchestra. Miriam's ears rang in the absence of sound. She looked around. The room was the same, but the feeling had changed. Eli's eyes widened. Not with fear. With reverence. She's awake. From upstairs, something heavy scraped across the floor. Not a footstep. Not quite. Something dragged. Slow. Intentional. Then another whisper, not Miriam's, and yet spoken in her voice. Come up and see me. She felt it in her chest. A pull. Not like fear, not anymore, but a sick curiosity, blooming under her ribs. You said she wants to see me. Why? Eli looked to the staircase. Because she remembers you. Or rather, you remind her of someone she lost. Who? He hesitated. Then quietly. The girl who lived inside the mirror. What do you mean, the girl who lived inside the mirror? Miriam asked, trying to sound skeptical, trying to pretend that the house wasn't breathing, that the stairs weren't waiting. Eli didn't answer immediately. He stepped over to the hearth, leaned against the mantel, and stared into the flames that no longer crackled. The fire had become perfectly still, like a painting. Or a memory. She was my daughter, he said finally. Lena. She was 7 when the clock stopped telling time and started, remembering it. Miriam slowly turned her head toward the dark hallway above. She disappeared, Eli continued. No scream. No struggle. One moment she was brushing her doll's hair, and the next, gone. But I started to hear her. In the ticking. And in the mirrors. I think the house took her first. You think the house did this? Miriam asked. No, Eli said, eyes cold and distant. I think she did. The thing that watches through the clocks. The one who came after I built too many, heard too much, made the gears too perfect. Time bent inward. And when it bent, something else stepped in. Miriam stared at the empty hallway again. So, what does this ghost or creature or whatever it is, want with me? Eli met her eyes. She doesn't want to hurt you. She wants you to stay. That's worse. The silence broke. Thud. A single, heavy step from above. Then a second. Then soft laughter, faint, girlish, and wrong. Miriam mounted the first stair, against every instinct in her body. The air grew colder with each step. Behind her, Eli said nothing. The staircase was longer than it looked. Every step echoed, but not quite in sync with her own, like something else was climbing beside her, just a beat behind. At the top, the hallway stretched into darkness, lit only by a single wall sconce flickering with gaslight. The wallpaper was peeling in long, curling strips, and the floor tilted slightly to the left. Doors lined both sides, 5 in all. She reached the first and placed her hand on the knob. It turned with a click. The door opened into a bedroom. A small one. There was a child's bed in the corner. A doll lay face down on the floor, limbs twisted. The mirror above the dresser was fogged over, but as Miriam stepped closer, she saw something move behind the glass. It wasn't her. The figure was small, wearing a nightgown. Long, black hair. Bare feet. It stepped forward inside the mirror, but didn't reflect the room properly. In its mirror world, the walls were burnt, the bed was ash, and clocks covered every surface like parasites. The girl raised her hand. So did Miriam. But the reflection did not match. Then the girl smiled, wide, unblinking, and the mirror cracked down the center. Miriam stumbled backward, heart hammering, and slammed the bedroom door shut. The hallway had grown quieter, and somehow, even darker. The gaslight sconce now flickered with a sickly green hue. She moved on to the second door. This time she didn't hesitate, she wanted answers, not ghosts. Inside was what looked like a study. A large, dust-covered desk, shelves of books warped from moisture. The air smelled like iron and mildew. A single clock sat on the desk, one she hadn't seen before. Carved of bone-white wood. Small. Elegant. No hands. But it ticked. And as it ticked, the room shifted. The walls expanded outward. The ceiling drew higher. And then she heard it again, her own voice, muttering nonsense at first. Then clearly. Tick, tock, you can't stop the open clock. She stepped forward, transfixed. Shadows danced along the walls in impossible shapes, gears turning but not connected to anything physical. Then the voice spoke one word that froze her in place. Stay. Miriam spun to run, but the door had moved. Now it was behind the desk, partly open, darkness curling out from it like fingers. She stepped through the crooked door and found herself in a workshop. It was larger than the house should have allowed, impossibly large, with rafters like cathedral arches. Tables lined the room, every surface covered in clocks in various states of assembly. They ticked in reverse. Every single one. Miriam stepped forward and felt something crunch beneath her boot. She looked down. Teeth. Small, yellowed teeth. Child-sized. On the far wall, a massive gear slowly turned without source or mechanism. It was embedded into the house itself, fused to the structure. In its center, a mirror. Unlike the others, this one showed no reflection. Only a hallway, a familiar one. It was this hallway, but empty. Then a girl entered the mirror's view. Pale. Limp black hair. She turned and looked directly at Miriam. Her mouth opened, too wide, and she screamed silently, like glass breaking in slow motion. Miriam screamed aloud and ran. Back in the hallway, she collided with Eli, who hadn't moved from where she left him. You saw her, he said, voice almost mournful. What is she? A memory given shape. A time that forgot how to end. He reached into his coat and handed her the silver pocket watch. It was cold. Heavy. This is the only piece of time that still runs forward in this house. Hold on to it. And then what? I wait for her to eat me. No, Eli said, you go to the last door. The fifth. Only then will she show you why she called you. Miriam backed away. No. No, I'm done playing this game. Eli's voice turned sharp. If you don't go, you'll stay here. Like me. Like the others. Others? He only gestured to the clocks. That's when Miriam saw it. Inside each glass face, if you looked closely, there were eyes. Blinking. Watching. The fifth door had no knob. No hinges. Just an empty outline in the wallpaper where a door should be. The moment Miriam approached, the pocket watch in her hand began to tick faster. Her pulse quickened to match it. She pressed her hand to the wall. Click. The outline swung open, revealing a narrow stone staircase spiraling downward into the foundation of the house. No light. Just the pocket watch's soft ticking and her own breath. Step by step, she descended into the dark. The air grew thick, old, like it hadn't been touched by the sky in centuries. And then, at the bottom, she found the clock. 10 feet tall. Its gears made of bone. Its hands turning in opposite directions. In front of it, a mirror. In the mirror, herself, only older. Paler. Hollowed eyes. Smiling with a mouth full of clock teeth. Welcome home, the reflection said. The reflection stepped out of the mirror. Not metaphorically. Literally. The glass rippled like water and the thing, her, and not her, walked forward on bare, silent feet. Miriam staggered back, watch clutched tight in her palm. "You're not real," she whispered. The thing smiled. "You will be. I'm what's left when time forgets how to die. When memory loops itself like ribbon. I was you before you ever came here. And you'll be me when the last clock stops." "No!" Miriam shouted. She lifted the watch. It beat like a heart now, fast, urgent. The reflection flinched. "You brought it," the thing hissed. "The final beat? You fool." The watch cracked in her hand. Light spilled from it, warm, golden, forward-moving. The clocks around her began to stutter, miss beats, slow. The giant bone clock groaned. Mirrors shattered. And the house began to scream. The walls shook. Not with sound, but with pressure, like something massive shifting inside the bones of the house. The glass of shattered mirrors vibrated across the floor. The reflection, that mimic of Miriam, staggered backward, clutching its head. "You broke it," she rasped, voice melting between tones. "You broke her rhythm." The silver watch in Miriam's hand pulsed like a heartbeat, then exploded in a burst of warm light. She collapsed to her knees, vision flooded with images. A girl in a nightgown spinning in a circle of clocks. Eli standing over a workbench, weeping. A woman made of shadow and brass, whispering into gears. And then, silence. The ticking stopped. All of it. The house exhaled a long, rattling breath. For the first time since entering, Miriam could hear only her own heartbeat. Then, a knock. 3 soft, polite raps, from inside the wall behind her. Miriam turned slowly. The wall at her back pulsed once, like something was pushing against it. A small crack spread outward, as if the plaster were paper. A door emerged. Not carved. Not built. But grown. Against all better judgment, Miriam reached forward. Her fingers brushed the surface, rough, damp. It opened like a mouth. On the other side, a hallway of wood and bone. Pipes ran along the ceiling, ticking faintly, filled with moving gears. The walls were lined with frames, photos, but all blurred, as though the subjects had been moving too fast. Some looked like Miriam. Others like Lena. And some had no faces at all. At the end of the hall stood a single chair. And in it, sat a girl. She was small, maybe 7 or 8. Her black hair hung in thick ropes, tangled with threads of spiderweb. She wore a pale blue nightgown stained with dust and time. Her eyes were shut. Her skin almost translucent. "Lena?" Miriam asked. The girl's eyes opened. They were full of ticking. Tiny gears rotated slowly in her pupils. "You stopped her," Lena said. "She's sleeping again. But not gone. Never gone." "Who is she, Lena? What is she?" Lena blinked slowly. "The house built her. Or maybe. She built the house. She's not a ghost. She's a loop. An unfinished minute. A heartbeat that never learned how to stop. Can I leave?" "Not yet," the girl said. "She's not done with you. You cracked her mirror, but there's one more clock. The first one. The one father buried in the attic." "Why the attic?" "Because it sees backward. And you need to see where you came from." Then Lena held out a small, metal key. The attic door was hidden behind a wall panel at the top of the stairs, just beyond where the wallpaper peeled like old scabs. The key fit smoothly, clicking once. Behind it, a narrow spiral staircase, climbing higher than the house should allow. Miriam ascended in silence, one hand on the iron railing. With each step, the air grew colder. Older. Dust fell like snowflakes from the ceiling. The door at the top was sealed with wax and wire. A symbol was burned into the wood, a clock face with no hands. She reached out, hesitated, then broke the seal. The door groaned open. Inside, a cathedral of gears. The attic was vast, impossible, stretching farther than the house's footprint. Gears turned in slow arcs across every surface. Some drifted in midair. In the center stood the first clock. It was crude. Hand-carved from black oak, its face cracked down the center. No numbers. No hands. Only a dark, circular void where time should be. Miriam stepped close. Her reflection warped in the void, twisting, becoming versions of herself she didn't remember, a child crying in a forest, a teen whispering to a mirror, a woman sleeping beneath ticking walls. Then she saw Eli. Younger. Smiling. Holding a baby. And behind him, a woman of shadows and wires. Watching. Watching her. The woman in the vision stepped forward. She was made of shadows and brass and flickering light. Her eyes were spinning clock faces. Her mouth was lined with golden keys. "You built me," she said, and her voice sounded like hundreds of ticking clocks layered together. "When you gave memory shape. When you refused to forget." Miriam whispered, "You're not real. I'm every moment no one wanted to let go." The attic began to tremble. The gears reversed. The void pulsed. "You cracked me, girl. You broke my rhythm." Miriam raised the key Lena had given her. It glowed now, humming faintly. "Let me go," she said. "End it." The woman laughed, a sound like shattering mirrors. "You are me. Just newer." Then the floor gave out. Miriam fell through blackness, no sensation of wind, only ticking, ticking, ticking. Flashes of memory flickered around her. A girl locked in a closet, whispering to the walls. Eli carving runes into a clock face. Lena reaching from inside a mirror. Miriam herself, aged, eyes hollow, winding a clock without hands. She hit something soft. A feather bed. And sat up in a different version of the house. The walls were clean. The wood polished. The windows sparkled with morning light. She was back in the house. But maybe a century ago. She heard a voice downstairs, Eli's. Younger, happier. "Lena, don't run with the gears, you'll twist your ankle." Miriam crept to the landing. Lena, younger, zipped past her, giggling. Eli stood in the study, polishing a timepiece. He looked up, and saw Miriam. And froze. "You." He whispered. "You were always here, weren't you?" Time began to fold again. The walls shimmered. Everything started to repeat. Miriam ran. Down the stairs, through the memory rooms, clocks multiplying around her. The door out shimmered ahead, but when she grabbed the knob, her hand passed through it like fog. She turned. The shadow woman stood at the center of the room. But now, she looked like Miriam. Exactly like her. "I told you," she said. "You stay. You loop. You remember. Forever." Then she stepped into Miriam. Pain bloomed like a thunderclap. Memories poured in, not hers alone, but all the houses, every guest, every echo, every girl who'd ever come too close. And when Miriam opened her eyes again, she stood in the entryway. The clocks were ticking. And someone was knocking at the door. Knock. 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 The sound echoed through the house like it always had, like it always would. Miriam, no longer just Miriam, stood in the entryway, watching the door. She felt the ticking inside her now, a second pulse beneath her skin. The door opened on its own. A young man stood outside, winded, backpack slung over one shoulder. Hello? He called into the dim foyer. I got lost hiking. My phone's dead. I saw the light. The words were familiar. Almost identical to her own. She tried to speak but her voice came out wrong. Not hers. Not anymore. She smiled, too wide. Come in, she said softly. You must be tired. The house creaked in pleasure. The young man stepped inside. His name was Jordan. He looked around with the cautious awe of someone who didn't yet know they'd made a fatal mistake. The door closed behind him. All around them, the clocks remained silent, but attentive. Is someone else here? He asked. Miriam tilted her head. In her mind, gears turned. Thoughts rewound. The girl in her, the shadow woman, remembered everything. Just me, she said. He nodded, wiping his brow. Place feels old. Familiar, weirdly. He passed a tall, cracked mirror on the wall. For a second, his reflection didn't follow him. Miriam saw it. So did the house. You should rest, she said. The house can be a little strange at first. Jordan gave a nervous chuckle. Is that ticking? I thought I heard it outside too. You will. Miriam watched him from the shadows as he explored. Every movement he made stirred something in the walls. The clocks weren't ticking yet, but they were listening. She followed his steps silently. Through the parlor. Past the fireplace. To the hallway where the fifth door still loomed, faint and invisible to him, for now. He stopped in front of a mantelpiece. Who lived here before? He asked aloud, not expecting an answer. A man who made clocks, Miriam said from behind him. And a girl who listened too closely. Jordan turned, startled. You move quiet. So does time, once you stop counting it. He looked confused. That's not comforting, he said with a nervous grin. Miriam's eyes shimmered faintly. She didn't blink. It's not meant to be. From deep within the house, the ticking resumed, slow, soft, spreading. Jordan tossed in bed, unable to sleep. The guest room was cold, though he couldn't find any windows open. The clocks, he hadn't noticed so many before, ticked in chaotic unison. One by one, they began to whisper. Jordan. He sat up straight. Heart hammering. The whispers came from inside the walls. He pressed his ear against the wood. Turn the handle. Go to the mirror. Remember who you were. He stumbled out of bed and into the hall. The shadows looked different now, longer, pulsing in rhythm with the clocks. He passed the bathroom and saw his reflection inside the fogged mirror. It smiled at him. He did not smile back. The mirror rippled. Jordan reached toward it. It wasn't glass anymore, it yielded, like water, like breath. And then he fell into it. For a moment, there was nothing but ticking and darkness. Then he stood inside the house again, but wrong. Warped. Reversed. Clocks hung upside down. The walls whispered in voices that weren't language. Time ran backward. He saw himself, standing in the hall, reaching toward the mirror. And Miriam behind him. Only it wasn't Miriam. It was the woman from the mirror. The one with two wide eyes. And clock teeth. She grinned. And blinked. And turned toward him. Deep inside the house, somewhere in the core of gears and wood, the real Miriam screamed. She was still there, a small piece of her anyway, bound inside the framework of memory. She felt Jordan slip. Felt him fall into the same trap. But he was newer. The house wasn't done with him. No more loops, she whispered. No more clocks. No more her. In the mirror realm, she found a crack, thin as thread, running through the fabric of the memory world. She punched through it. Light split the gearwork. Screams echoed from the foundation upward. And then, for the first time, something in the house broke. The house stuttered. The ticking became erratic, halting, reversing, gasping like a dying breath. Jordan collapsed on the floor. Miriam, eyes glowing gold, reached for him. "Wake up," she said. He blinked. "Where am I? What is this?" "A story that's trying to eat you." She pulled him to his feet. Around them, mirrors shattered, walls buckled, clocks began melting like wax. "How do we get out?" he asked. Miriam looked up. The ceiling was opening, like the sky itself was peeling back. "We don't," she said. "But maybe we can burn it shut." The house was collapsing from the inside out. Not like a structure failing, but like a concept unraveling. Walls flexed like lungs. Gears snapped. Portraits bled black oil down the wallpaper. Jordan followed Miriam through a hall that stretched for miles and shifted with every step. "Where are we going?" he shouted over the thunderous ticking. "To the original loop," Miriam yelled. "The one that started all of this." Behind them, the shadow woman, half Miriam, half mirror, climbed down the walls on all fours, mouth open, grinning. "You don't get to leave," she said. Her voice was all of them. Lena. Eli. Even Jordan. "This isn't your house anymore," Miriam growled. She turned, holding out the melted silver core of the watch Eli gave her. It pulsed once. And the house screamed. At the end of a corridor made of spine-like beams and cracked glass, they found it. The root clock. It hung suspended in air, gears fused with veins, glass hands twitching with pain. Dozens of faces peeked from the casing, distorted, crying, whispering memories into gears that no longer turned properly. Miriam stepped forward, trembling. "This is the first wound," she said. "How do we close it?" Jordan asked. "We don't," she said. "We break it open. Fully. Let time finish bleeding." She handed Jordan the melted core of the pocket watch. "Throw it into the mechanism. When it shatters, everything will either die, or restart without her." Jordan hesitated. "And what about us?" She smiled. "Sadly. We're already part of the house." Jordan raised the silver core over his head. The root clock began to scream, every face in its casing howling in agony. "You don't understand," the voice of the shadow woman shrieked from above. "You break me, you break everything." Jordan hesitated. Miriam's hand gripped his wrist. "Now." He hurled it into the heart of the clock. Crack. The silver melted into the gears, light erupted from the fractures. Time surged out in both directions. A golden wave expanding backward and forward simultaneously. The house convulsed. The clocks howled. And the gears stopped. Rooms caved in on themselves. Mirrors collapsed into pools of mercury. Paintings screamed and burned from the inside. Miriam grabbed Jordan's hand and ran. The hallway twisted. Doors led to other decades, other lifetimes. A woman sobbing in a 1920s kitchen. A boy in 1891 strangling on clock springs. A girl in the 70s reaching into a mirror and vanishing. "They're all versions," Miriam said, panting. "All fragments. The house remembered them instead of letting them go. But if it stops remembering, then it forgets us, too." Jordan looked into a cracked mirror. His reflection was already fading. From the broken stairwell above, Eli appeared, no longer ghost, not quite man. Half of his face was cracked like old porcelain, glowing gold beneath. "You did it," he said. "You broke her rhythm. But the loop is still trying to close. Help us get out," Miriam begged. Eli raised his hand. In it, his original pocket watch, untouched. "One way out," he said. One final rewind. You can go back. Start again. Forget. But you'll never remember each other. Miriam looked at Jordan. Then at the burning house. We can't keep doing this, she whispered. Jordan nodded. Then we end it. They climbed back into the root clock's chamber, now hollow, still glowing. The gears floated in suspension, slowing, almost peaceful. You go, Miriam said. I stay. Jordan's eyes widened. No. You don't get to do that. I was part of it for too long, she said. She made a home inside me. I'll hold the door open. You walk out. She handed him the last key, Lena's key, the one with the child's name etched on the stem. Unlock the mirror at the front hall. It'll be a door again, if time agrees. And if it doesn't? Then you'll live here, like the rest of us. Jordan raced through the unraveling house. The halls screamed names at him, names of people he'd never been, or maybe had. Daniel. Margaret. Lena. He reached the front hallway. The mirror stood tall, a spiral keyhole glinting in its center. He plunged the key in. The mirror pulsed. Reflected light began to twist, into forest, sky, morning. He stepped forward, then froze. Behind him, a girl in a nightgown. Lena. Or something wearing her. Don't leave us, she whispered. We're still here. I'm sorry, he said. But it's time. And stepped through. Jordan awoke in a field. Morning sun. Dew on grass. No trees in sight. Just blue sky, warm breeze, birdsong. He sat up, dazed. No bag. No phone. No memory of how he got there, just a vague sense of relief. He looked around. A dirt path. Footprints, fading. Someone else had walked this way recently. He stood and followed them. And far, far behind him, a faint sound echoed. Not a tick. A sigh. Back inside the root clock, Miriam sat beneath the final gear. The house was nearly silent now, just faint breathing, the kind you feel in old wood. She reached for the gear, touched its surface, and spoke softly. Let them go. The house didn't answer. But it didn't resist. She sat back, closed her eyes. And listened to the silence grow. Then, finally. She forgot. The house still stands, deep in the woods, where the trail only appears to the lost. But the windows are dark. The clocks are silent. The mirrors only reflect. Sometimes, a child will hear a ticking in their dreams, and draw gears on the walls. Sometimes a mirror fogs from the inside. And very, very rarely, someone will vanish in the forest. And the house will wake again. But for now, it sleeps. Long after the collapse, the legend of the crooked house lived on in whispers, told around campfires, passed between hikers, and scribbled in notebooks by those who never made it back. Some say it was just a house. Others say it was a machine. But no one remembered Eli Graft. No records. No gravesite. No clocks. He had been erased, as though time itself no longer recognized his place within it. But the silence he left behind, that still echoed. Especially on windless nights. Jordan never returned to the city. He tried, once. But nothing felt real there. The rhythm of clocks, the order of days, too neat. Too manufactured. He bought a small house in a quiet town, surrounded by woods but not in them. He filled his shelves with books, his rooms with light. And he never kept a clock. He forgot most of it, names, faces, what exactly had happened, but sometimes, just before sleep, he'd hear ticking in his ears and wake in a cold sweat. Once, he saw a mirror shimmer in a hotel hallway. He turned it face down, And kept walking. Somewhere deeper than deep, where mirrors rot and gears spin without axis, a girl sings. Her voice is soft, a lullaby with no melody, only breath. She sits in a circle of broken clocks, all ticking at once, but none in time. She hums to herself. And to the dark. Because Miriam is gone now. And the house sleeps. But Lena remains. Not whole. Not lost. Just, remembered. Back in the woods, if you walk too far off trail, you might find a clearing. No house. No footprints. Just silence. But sometimes, under the moss, people find metal. A gear here. A winding key there. Sometimes a half-buried watch, stopped at 3:33. They don't know why they keep them. But they do. And they dream. And in their dreams, the clocks whisper. Decades later, a girl named Sophie moves with her family to a cottage in the same valley. They say the land was once part of an old estate. Burned down. Forgotten. She explores the woods often, alone. One day, she stumbles upon something odd. A frame. A square of wood, standing upright, like a door with no house behind it. It has glass. A mirror. Untouched by weather. She leans in. And sees a girl in a blue nightgown, standing behind her. Smiling. Inside the broken gears of time, there is a moment caught like a fly in amber. Miriam. But not alive, not like before. She watches through eyes no longer hers, listens through wood and glass, hears names whispered by lost hikers and lonely children. She doesn't speak anymore. But she remembers. And sometimes, when the world goes too quiet, when time hiccups, she can feel Jordan. She doesn't call to him. She simply waits. In the attic of an antique shop 3 states away, someone finds a journal. The Book of Hours, it's called. Bound in leather that smells like moss. Inside are diagrams of clocks, but they aren't mechanical. They're spatial. Organic. Wrong. On the final page, a single phrase is written in crimson ink. Do not wind the silence. Jordan grows old. He marries. Has a son. Tells no one what he can't quite remember. One day, while hiking with his boy, they stray too far. The sun dips behind the hills. Jordan sees trees begin to lean, just slightly. The air stills. His son asks, "Where are we, Dad?" Jordan doesn't answer. He just pulls him back toward the trail, fast, heart pounding. Because somewhere between the leaves, he sees a porch. And a door. In a nowhere place, between seconds, between reflections, the clocks begin to stir again. Not all of them. Just one. It ticks once. Twice. And in the quiet that follows, a voice sighs. She's still here. And someone laughs. No one finds it for years. Then one foggy autumn, a traveler sees a flicker in the trees. A light, golden and warm. They walk a little closer. There's a path, just barely visible. It leans left. Then right. And at the end, a crooked house. Old, yes. But not ruined. Still standing. Still waiting. Inside, the clocks are silent. But not for long. The door opens. And the house breathes.